So we all know we're being recorded. And just so everybody knows where they are, we are at the new Project Bidders Conference. So if that doesn't sound like where you're supposed to be, you can stay. But that's what we will be talking about for the next hour. So I'm Liz Isaacs. I am here with Shannon Quinn Sheeran. We're from Housing Innovations. And so, as you know, we have an RFP out. We're going to talk about it today and a couple just quick caveats. We're going to give you the best information we can today. Obviously, we're not going to lie to you or make things up, but a lot of things, not a lot, some things we will not know until the notice of funding opportunity or the NOFO is released. So there's always more information once that happens. When is that going to happen? We never really know. If I were to guess, I would say late June, but I don't have a crystal ball and no one tells me anything until the NOFO is released. And also, you may have questions that we should know the answers to, but we're just tired and can't, our brains might not be working, and we'll get back to you. So that's another category. And then we'll talk a little bit about FAQs. We're going to have a way for you guys to submit questions and for us to make sure that we're providing responses to everyone, which leads me to my last comment, which is totally transparent process. We want to help everyone and anyone. So anyone can call us, ask us questions, email us questions. We'll do the very best we can answering the questions. This is not, none of this is a trick or a test. So there's nothing we won't explain to you. And then anything you ask us, we'll put in FAQs so that other people can benefit from your question and then the answer. All right, that was a lot, but I'll move faster. Here we go. All right.
And we will, like, if you have questions along the way, raise your hand or put them in the chat. And depending on time, we will get to them today. If we're short on time, we will get back to you with the responses.
That's right. And also, Shannon, I think you said that if folks want to stay once we're finished and want a quick preview, we could do a little ZenGen screen sharing maybe.
If somebody wants that, we can do
Yeah,
that.
if anybody hasn't, and really would just be for people who know nothing about the process, and we hope we have brand new people. But yeah, let us know if you have some ZenGen questions or need a quick tutorial, and we can do that when we're done. So just really quickly, we're going to give you a background about what this is all about, what the deadlines and timeline looks like, what projects are eligible. So this is really important. Because I do feel like every year we kind of get applications that aren't quite meeting the eligibility, and that means you're spending time on something that's not worthwhile for you. We'll tell you about the rules, the guidelines. In the application you're going to do, everyone does certain sections. We have some sections that are just specific to, depending on what project you're doing. We'll make sure that everybody knows how you can apply. We'll tell you about how you're scored. We'll give you tips, and then we will do some reminders and we'll take quick questions. But like Shannon said along the way, stop us, ask questions. Okay. I think each year I get this slide because it's my favorite, which is the instructions are incredibly important. And I don't want to speak for Shannon, but I'll speak for myself. Lauren on our team really creates them. Actually, she and Shannon did them together, but every time I read the instructions, I'm like, oh, right. I learned something. I know there's a lot of information there. Sometimes they're a little bit dense, but we want to just make sure that there's one place that really should have almost all the answers. You might need a little more detail. You might want a further explanation, but the instructions are incredibly important because they align with the application and they let you know exactly what you can do, what you can't do, and what's really important. So again, may not be super fun, but if it were me and I were applying, I would start with the instructions and read them a few times. Then I would have them on a split screen as you're doing the application, because there are going to be times you're doing the application and you're going to think, well, that's confusing. And it's going to say, look at the instructions, and the instructions will tell you what to do. So again, I think I say this every year. If you leave with one piece of information, it's to read the instructions. So what are we doing here? We just want to let folks know that every year we compete with other continuum of care all over the country for funding. This year won't be different. We're going to do this in 2024. And right now we're accepting applications for new bonus projects and DV bonus funds. So that's what this year looks like. We always want to make sure we love having our veterans and people who apply every year and all the people we work really closely with. But we also want this to be a super inclusive process. We want anyone to apply who would be eligible, and this would be applicable for them. And so I will ask all the CAN folks who are here and anyone who belongs to other groups and different groups, please spread the word so that we can bring other people into our community of funded folks. And like I already said, once the NOFO is out, we'll have further information and be able to clarify what the competition will look like.
Before you start on this slide,
Yeah.
Liz, I just want to make the comment that the graphic on this slide is of the Hartford area, but the RFP is not limited to the Hartford area. No confusion. I don't want anyone to be confused by the graphic.
Got it. Got it. All right. We just want to make sure, it's not Nebraska or anything like that. It's Connecticut. So that's definitely Connecticut. I already said this, but just to reiterate, we will provide technical assistance to anyone. So call us. Please don't sit and suffer and think, well, that didn't make any sense. What are they asking? Call us, because I'm going to tell you it helps us too. We would rather answer your question before you submit the application. Because if we don't understand what you're talking about, we will call you once the application is submitted. So you're helping us out too. So just, and really no silly questions. It's not all intuitive. Shannon may talk about this. I can't remember which one of us is going to talk about it, but for ease of use, we have created an application which really mirrors the HUD application. That being said, we had to follow some of HUD's logic in creating the application. And so sometimes we probably do use a little bit of HUD speak and HUD logic. So again, ask for questions. So in 2023, we got almost $59 million. We applied for over 5 million and we got 2.4 million. As you know, I think it's happened once ever. We got all our money once. We generally just don't get all the money. It's tremendously competitive. And as I mentioned, we compete with COCs all over the country for this money. We do generally get a high score. We just got our score back. I don't remember where we fall nationally. We did well, but each year is different. We do the very best we can, but we always want folks to know it's competitive. So even if we put your application forward, it's not necessarily going to get funded. And that's not to discourage you. It's just for you to set realistic expectations. Okay. So what's new? So every year something is new. What's new is Shannon worked her magic in ZenGen. And so you have a single application for COC bonus, reallocation, and DV funds. And for you, it will be seamless. You just will check the appropriate box and you will see what's happening in the application, but it's nice. They're all in one place this year. We mentioned this, but we want to make sure everyone knows this. You can resubmit your application. So this is really important. Which I'm probably describing everyone on this call, you just say, this is ridiculous. We don't have the time. We don't have the shelf space. We can't do it. We submitted last year. You can resubmit your application. I think there's a later slide and we'll put it out there. If you want to see what your score was last year, HUD required us to submit those scores last year as part of the competition. So you can make a decision. Good enough, or we don't even have a choice because there's no one to write the application. All you need to do is give us a heads up, shoot us an email and say, please use my application from last year. Now, that being said, you're going to get your score from last year. You're also going to want to make sure that you know what's different this year so that you're applying for eligible units. And what else, Shannon? We just talked about this.
I just gave that example. So for instance, if the PSH new units for families is not eligible this year. So if you if you applied for that last year, you might want to look at that and decide, I do want to submit new because, that's not an eligible thing. So I want to change what I'm asking for.
Exactly. And I don't want to oversimplify, which I could be accused of doing sometimes, but if you don't like your score and you want to resubmit, there are a few changes. Shannon, you keep me honest because this is your realm, but that also probably could be done and it would not be like writing a whole new application. Correct, Shannon? We have a few different elements, a few different questions.
Yeah, so there are like, yes, you can keep your same score and just your application and your score will be the same. There are a few, like there really aren't major changes to the application this year.
Right,
So if you did want to update, like not resubmit, but use
right.
kind of the general same project and just update a few things in Zengen, I was going to say this later, but I'll just say it
Yeah,
now. Like you can cut and paste like you do in a Word document. You can cut the text in whatever format you have it already and paste it into the fields in Zengen. So it shouldn't be like you're starting from,
yeah.
starting fresh.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to say. And again, everybody's hours of time. So I don't want to pretend 2 hours or 3 hours isn't a lot of time, but you just may think about it. And obviously you're going to make the decision that works best, but you can cut and paste, which would also give you the opportunity to beef up a project or change things up. Anyway, so what else is new? So some of you may remember from talking about this in the steering committee meeting that new PSH units can use the HUD definition of disability. So you're not limited to the DEMIS definition. And Shannon's going to talk a little bit about this during the match, what the repercussions are there. But we do have a broader definition of disability. And then this year we have set asides for projects with at least 25% of COC funded units that are designated for folks over 60. And then we are also doing preferences for PSH projects that have either no service dollars or have service dollars under $5,000 per unit. Okay, still new. Oh, this is exciting too. Yeah, so as you may remember, we've always used 7% for admin. Folks have said, hey, we're really figuring out how to take advantage of admin and we really want to be able to apply for 10%. So now you can do that. We're going to talk a little bit about VAWA budget line items. So there are kind of new ways to ask for money there. And that there's new section for not-for-profit agencies that are going to do the rent, that are proposing to do the rental assistance themselves. So what does the process look like? I won't go through every step because I want to keep us moving, but you're going to submit an application in Zengen. We have a great scoring committee. They come together, put really thoughtful feedback, spend a lot of time on every project talking it through. That actually will happen probably in May, let's say, for grins that we know that HUD will release the NOFO in June, could be July. Then we will let you know if you were selected by BOS to submit to HUD. So that's important. Anyone who's new or hasn't applied yet. So there are multiple steps in the process. First, BOS accepts your application. Then you submit to HUD, and then ultimately HUD would need to accept your application. And to get from your BOS application to HUD, you are going to submit your project application in what's called eSnaps. Many of you know that and are already twitching. If it's new to you, we will certainly spend time providing technical assistance to new groups, but that is the electronic system that you use to submit to HUD. Yeah, very good. So just the timeline, we talked a little bit about this. We released the RFP, obviously, today is the bidders conference. This part is important. So we are going to ask you, and I know it's quick, so you're going to want to read those instructions, read the application, and submit questions to us. Now, the caveat here is you can submit questions after March 6th, but we can't promise that if we need to go to HUD or we need to dig deep for the answer, that we can get you the answer in time, which is why we ask for you to do a pretty quick turnaround and review of questions, because we really can't answer questions like the day that before the RFP is due, because we just probably can't do the required research, and we always want to give you really good answers. We don't want to make anything up. So please take a moment, read through, maybe more than a moment, but read through all the materials so that if you have a question, you can submit it to us. And then we will release the FAQ, let folks know what's happening. The 20th is really important. By 5 p.m., the applications are due in Zengen. The scoring committee is meeting sometime in the spring. We're still doing that. Shannon we do have our question mark for when the NOFO is released. The steering committee then would come together sometime in the summer to do the vote on ranking. Again, in the summer, we will work together in eSnaps. So projects will submit in eSnaps, but we will certainly provide technical assistance. HUD generally tells us sometime in the fall or the winter who is awarded. And then folks go through the grant agreement process with HUD sometime thereafter in the winter or the spring. All right, I've talked a lot. I'm going to pause for a moment before I do project types. Any questions on timeline?
Or any of what we talked
Or
about.
any of what we talked about?
Hi, this is Eric from the Smart Housing Office.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, so you had mentioned that you'll show us our grant scores if we submitted in 2023. Are those total grant scores, or are those broken down by section so we know what areas we might need to work on, or?
No, it's not broken down in sections. It's a total score. Yeah, we didn't give broken down in sections.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Anything else? Kathy, did you have a question? No. All right, we'll keep going. It's not too late. Questions can keep coming. All right, so we're going to talk about what project types can you apply for. All right, stay with me on this one. 3 types, PSH. I got this though. Shannon's going to tell me if I get it wrong. You can do type 1. So we're in PSH and it's for individuals only. So this is really important, not families here, right? And you can do type 1, hey, I just need rental assistance to have new congregate or scattered site units. Type 2, I only need services because I'm going to provide enhanced services for existing projects. So either projects that have no funding at all for services, or projects that are below the 5,000 per unit per household. I'm going to pause there for a second because I also want to do a quick public service announcement on the folks that have no dedicated services. So I have reached out to all of our friends in the cans to say, here are the projects in your can and they have no service funding. Can you please reach out to providers, see if anybody's interested in connecting up with these projects to provide services. So the last sentence I said was connecting up with those projects. So you want to say, I'm making this up, I'm in New Haven and I want to serve Brittany's units. That's what we call Brittany's units. I want to do Brittany's units. Reach out to Brittany, because ultimately, if your project is selected, you will do, I lost my words. What do we call an expanded project with the existing project? So this is highly needed, but it would be great if you also connect up with connect up with the projects that need the services. So that was my public service.
A stronger project application will have described how they are working with a provider who has the units already and how they're going to coordinate moving forward to provide.
Absolutely. And as many of you on this Zoom know, there's a real need. There are folks who are, as you know, better than me, the most vulnerable people with the most complex life issues and needs, and they are not getting any. So they're really struggling to get services, and it's threatening their housing stability. So if you know folks, if you're one of those folks, please ponder that. All right, I pause because now we're going to talk about type 3, which is exciting because it combines type 1 and type 2. So you can apply for both. So we just want to let you know your different options. So 1 is just rental assistant, 2 is just services, and 3 combines both. Go ahead, Shannon.
So I'm just for project type 1, it's for new permanent supportive housing units. And yes, for new PSH, you would provide rental assistance, but we would expect that you would also have supportive services, and whether you get that from DOC funding, you're applying for it here or somewhere else, but we would expect that any new PSH units would also have services.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, so what are our eligible budget line items? We have rental assistance, we have supportive services, we have project admin, which remember now we can take to 10%, and we have Violence Against Women Act funds, which we're going to talk about in a couple slides. And that was for type 1. For type 2, we're going to have just supportive services, project administration, and VAWA. Then for type 3, we have rental assistance, supportive services, project admin, and VAWA. And as you know, because this is a HUD thing, PSH projects unfortunately are not eligible for DV bonus. Okay. So folks serving survivors of domestic violence know that there are often unique and important needs that folks have to keep themselves safe. So HUD recognizes this by allowing every project, so I'm going to repeat that, not just a DV project, every new project, it's also renewals, but we don't want to muddy the waters. Every new project has the ability to ask for these costs related to VAWA. So Shannon and I were talking. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, HUD, this was an eligible budget line item for the first time last year. So we're putting it here because they allowed it for all projects, and we anticipate that it will be again, but this for sure falls under the category of anything can change. Like, this was new last year. We anticipate it this year, but we're just using our best knowledge.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And of course, anything we ask you for that HUD says, nope, not this year, we would work with you if you were selected to change. There's, it's not a punitive thing. It's not, we don't punish anybody if you put the costs in that we told you to, and then HUD said no. So I won't go through each of these, but as you think about serving survivors, you may think, wow, this is a unique situation where I would need quickly to do moving costs multiple times, Shannon was reminding me, the HUD does have a lot of rules about security deposits. This VAWA cost makes it a little bit easier to put those costs in and to spend that money, again, to keep people safe when transfers happen. Okay. And then under confidentiality compliance, here are some other costs, things that you can spend money on that are specific to keeping people safe, to making sure that you're complying with what needs to happen for confidentiality. And so take a look. This may or may not impact the folks that you're serving, but it's great that HUD has seen that there are costs that may look different from another project if you're serving survivors. Okay, now we're going to talk about rapid rehousing. Same thing here. We have a type 1 where we're going to do rental assistance for new scattered site units for individuals and here families. So remember that you can do families here. Type 2 is service funds to enhance services in already existing COC projects with services below the 5,000. And then type 3 allows you to combine 1 and 2. And rapid rehousing may apply for the COC bonus or DV. So where DV, remember we noted, wasn't allowed to apply for PSH, they may apply for rapid rehousing. Great. So what kind of budget line items are eligible here? So for type 1, you can do rental assistance, supportive services, project admin, up to 10%. And the VAWA costs we just talked about, supportive services, project admin and VAWA are allowed for type 2. And then type 3 combines all of them, rental assistance, supportive services, project admin, and VAWA. And also DV bonus rapid rehousing projects may also apply for HMIS. So only the DV rapid rehousing. Very good. So we talked a little bit about this before, preferences and set aside. So what's this going to look like? Preferences. So we want to, there's preferences for PSH and rapid rehousing projects that can begin right away. There is also a preference for PSH projects that they can show that at least 25% of the units designated to serve folks are subsidized by a source that is not COC funding or ESG funding. So for example, you might be getting state bond funding for capital, you might be getting rental assistance for Section 8, whatever you're getting, you will have prompts in the application to explain those to us. And then set asides. We talked about this too a little bit for new PSH units for folks that are 60 and over. And then it would be at least 25% of the units are for folks 60 and over. And then there'll be a preference, we keep talking about this because it's so important, for projects to enhance services for folks who are in projects that have no services or have, that have no services. And we have the link to the list of COC projects that have no designated services.
And they just the amount of the set asides is going to be decided after the NOFO is released and we know how much money in total is available for a bonus.
Yes, exactly. And then there's the joint transitional housing rapid rehousing projects. So these are new units to serve participants who are fleeing or attempting to flee DV, dating, violence, sexual assault, stalking, or other dangerous situations. We know this is category 4. Eligible to apply for funding only for the DV bonus. And then you can apply for rental assistance, leasing, operating costs, support services, HMIS, project admin, and VAWA. And just watch that for the rental assistance, for leasing, it's only for the transitional housing piece, and for operating costs, it's only for the transitional housing piece. It's a little bit of a tricky, folks who have applied in the past know it's a little bit trickier than the other applications, but we all figure it out together. So, yeah. All right, before we do application guidelines, do we want to ask any questions, comments? All right, let's talk about the
The chat
application.
is very quiet.
What's up?
The chat's very quiet.
It's quiet. Because they're enjoying themselves too much to even think about asking a question. All right, so where can you apply? Just to clarify, you have to be in one of these counties, really anywhere in our great state except Fairfield County, and they have their own process. So you just have to be in one of the other counties. All right. So who can apply? Not-for-profits, state, local government, instrumentalities of state and local governments, and public housing authorities. So what else do you have to, what other requirements? So you need to be consistent with Housing First. So so this will be another time you'll say see instructions. You all know what Housing First is, or many of you. I don't want to say everyone, but I think they are. But please take a look in the instructions and just make sure that you see what you're signing up for, because part of asking for this funding is saying, yes, I'm going to follow Housing First. Anyone who's in my circle that works for me or I work for understands that we are going to follow Housing First.
I want to, Liz, I'm sorry. I just wanted to do a shout out about the Housing First. It's come to our knowledge that some of the property managers, specifically this would be with some of the PSH projects, are not on board with Housing First. So really think about whether all your partners are aware of Housing First, and if you're using a property management company in particular, that they're on board with following these practices.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon.
Yeah.
You got to participate in HMIS, or if you're a DV project, with the HMIS comparable database. And this is really important too. So like if anyone's doing a PSH and a tax credit project and you're coming here, you got to make sure that the housing authority or whoever, your property manager, wherever folks are coming in from, really get that you have to use the CAN. That's how we're getting referrals, and that's who we're serving here. So that's really important to do your legwork on that before you even apply. Just make sure everyone's on board. Got to come through the CAN. You need to comply with all of the HUD and the COC requirements. You have to be in good standing with HUD, and then we have just additional requirements. So you're going to take a look in the application and the instructions to let you know what those might look like. Common sections. Oh, so everyone, are you doing these?
I think this is me, Liz.
This is you. That's awesome.
But my cat wanted to join in, so I muted myself. Okay, applicant experience. Everyone has to fill out an applicant profile. The applicant profile is only required once for everybody. So if, for instance, I'm an organization that wants to apply for 2 separate projects, a PSH and a rapid rehousing, these are the questions I'm only going to fill out once, because they would remain the same for whatever project, because it's about your experience and your management structure and stuff like that. So organizational experience, you have to fill out how have you carried out the activities that you're proposing to fill out to carry out in this new project. What's your experience using a Housing First model, increasing people's incomes and linking them to mainstream resources? How have you worked with people, especially in today's market, with locating units, locating affordable units, and effectively utilizing federal funds or any other funds that you use to do the activities proposed in this project? We ask for your basic organization management structure. Many of these questions are taken straight from the HUD eSNAPS application with the hope that when we do then move towards that step where you have to do that, it won't be double work for you all, right? So basic organizational management structure, financial management structure, and how you plan on your staff, your whole staff, how it will operate this project together. We ask your efforts made to meet the unique needs of marginalized communities. And for DV projects, there are some DV specific questions, and they are also taken from the HUD application. So if providers have applied for a regular non-DV project in the past, 2022 or 2023, your responses are still there, but please look at every question, look at every bullet, because there may be some that remain the same and there may be some that have changed. So make sure you look at that and update it. This was a place where people, like a common place that there were mistakes in the past, or I think this year we were able to update it so that everything that we want is required, but in the past we weren't. So there were new questions that people left totally blank in the past. But this year, everything is required. But you know, if you miss a bullet, it's not gonna ding you. It's not gonna tell you, hey, you didn't fill that in. So please look at every bullet and fill those out. DV providers, we consolidated the application. Instead of having two separate ones, a DV bonus and a regular bonus, we consolidated both into one. So if you are a DV provider, since the application's combined, you're gonna have to create this profile new, but I just encourage you to, again, look at your responses, and if they still apply, just paste them into the responses for this year's application. But as I'm saying, for every single person, make sure your response still like checks every box for every bullet. Project description. So here we're really looking for you to tell us the most about what you're trying to do in this specific project. What's your plan to address housing and service needs of participants? What are your projected outcomes? There are several places in the application where we say, if you have data about how what your outcomes have been in the past, we love to see that. It's a great indicator to the people who are scoring of like what kind of projects, what kind of behavior they might expect going forward in a project like this. How you are coordinating with partners. We ask for your estimated schedule for project startup, billing units, and capacity. And this is another area where some people's responses could have been kind of thin. They're saying like, oh, we already have staff, so we'll be ready right away. But, you know, that doesn't ever seem to be really the case. So please, please think through, the scorers are looking that you've thought through, if you really get this money, how are you going to start? Do you need to advertise in today's market for employment? How long is that realistically going to take? And then training, how long is it going to take to train this new person? And so we want to have that fine balance of thinking through and taking the time it needs to be prepared, but also getting started as quickly as possible. But you know, there are ways that we could tell where someone's thought that kind of through or they've just said, we're starting right away, and kind of no more thought to how that really happened.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback on Shannon's comments, just to be as specific as you can. So if coordinating with partners is coordinating with your local mental health authority or employment services, tell us who those folks are. I'm going to tell you what happens every year from the scoring committee is they say, we don't really have a feel for this project because it feels generic. So I guess that's what would be my advice is like write the least generic application you can. And if you're connecting with, you know, whatever the one-stop shop in a particular town, say you have a great relationship with them if you do. Say you're going to start a new relationship with them if you intend to. But I always say this to everyone, tell us how your project is unique. not what someone wants to hear, but how you've had success in the past, like Shannon said. What kind of outcomes can you show us? But you want someone to read it and say, oh, wow, I really know what this agency is about, and I know exactly what it's going to look like. So that's for years we've been doing these scoring committees, and for years that comes out every single time, that everyone's sort of favorite projects that they feel like are going to succeed are because they can picture the project and they have very specific goals and outcomes and way to run the project.
I move forward, but then I move back for a minute here, because I just wanted to also say with project description, some of the projects that are submitted are pretty straightforward and some are more complicated. So some people might be planning on asking for COC funds to support a congregate project where they have funds from tax credit units or this or that. If that's the case, if it's one of these more complicated projects, please, if you haven't already been able to explain that to us somewhere else in a narrative in the application, the project description would be a good place to put that. So for instance, Liz, help me if I'm getting something wrong, but
no, you're exactly right. Yeah.
I'm just going to make up numbers here. Like there's a tax credit structure where $1 million in state bond funds have gone towards it. And 10 of those units, so a portion of that funds, has gone towards the money you're asking for supportive services for, right? If you're doing something like that, that's more complicated, please be as specific as possible. So yep. if you haven't done it elsewhere, do it in this project description about what you're doing.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And also, for any projects like that, we know that things fluctuate, right? You're in the planning stages and things change. If from the time that you started and submitted this application, your funding has changed or your timeline has changed on a project like that involves like development, please let us know. If any time after submission, the funding expectations or things have fallen into place that hadn't been in place before you submitted it, please let us know any updates to that. Right. Supportive services. Describe how participants will be assisted to remain in housing. So the question on supportive services has many bullets in it, and we really want to know all the things that we're asking about, right? So one of the things that people don't always address, plan to assess needs of participants and then address them. So assessing is a separate stage than addressing. We want to know both. Are you applying just a blanket package to everybody for supportive services, or are you doing a person-centered approach, which is going to look at each person and household uniquely and fill in the services that they need like that? How participants are assisted to increase employment and income. Employment as relevant, of course, because some people might be receiving disability and income. These are helping people stabilize in housing, right? Income. So that's what we want to know there. Match. So DEMIS will provide the match for PSH for only the portion of grants, since we are allowing now disabling conditions that don't meet the DEMIS, that are not restricted only to the DEMIS definition of disability. DEMIS is restricted to only being able to provide match for the portion of people that meet their definition of match. And there's more of all of this information in the instructions, but the DEMIS definition of match of disability is people experiencing serious mental illness, substance use issues, or HIV and AIDS. So as an example, you're proposing 20 unit PSH project. 10 of the units for the household will have a DEMIS qualified disability. DEMIS provides 50% of the total match that's required for the grant, and you as the applicant will be required to provide 50% of the match as well. Rapid rehousing and joint THRH applicants must meet match requirements themselves. Match is 25% of the total grant amount, excluding leasing. So even though for many rapid rehousing projects, the rental assistance funds go through ACT. ACT acts as a fiduciary agent, and the funds go through them for rental assistance. You never see them. Even though that's the case, you as the applicant are still required to provide match on those funds. Cash or in kind, I'm going to talk more about that, are eligible match types. Cash is recommended due to the very onerous documentation requirements of in-kind match. Any questions on this? Okay.
I don't see any questions, but I'll just reiterate what Shannon just said, because we find it heartbreaking, because we want everyone's application to get read and to get reviewed and get the attention it deserves. If you mess up the match, we can't necessarily read your application. Your application could get thrown out. Please,
Because
please
it
do the
doesn't meet
math.
threshold.
Also call us. You won't meet threshold. Call us. We will, you know, we're not doing anyone's math for them. We are some things we do and don't do. You don't want my math skills, but we will reiterate what the rule is so that you can understand the rule. Please, this is our goal this year. Shannon and I will feel so successful if everyone meets threshold as it relates to match. Please don't spend hours and hours and time and it's one number that gets messed up, which we all make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Unfortunately, this is a really important one if you make it. So if you're not sure, call us. And again, we're not doing your math, but we'll reiterate what the rule is, that you're following the rule correctly. That's it.
So there are just some examples on this slide of eligible match types. Cash match, if you're receiving funds from DEMIS and you put that towards case management, that's an eligible cash match. If you receive funds from a private source, from fundraising, and you put that towards building utilities not covered by COC grant, that's an eligible match, source and use. For in-kind match, an example is that a board member provides legal services at no cost to your participants, or an FQHC, a federally qualified healthcare organization, provides outpatient health services to your participants. All match must be used on eligible COC costs, but that's not restricted to what you're receiving or asking for in this grant. So if, for instance, your grant doesn't receive or ask for any funds for supportive services, you're getting those supportive services somewhere else, your match can still be used for supportive services funds in this grant. You don't have to be approved by HUD already to use supportive services funds to use your match funds towards that cost area. Budget, again, the instructions have a wealth of information on allowable expenses. It has information on indirect costs, admin, supportive services, and more. Review, when you're filling out the budget for supportive services, please review the sample text that's provided because when you fill in a budget line item under supportive services, then a box will open to ask you to describe what you're doing with that money. So kind of use that sample text as a template to give us enough information to know how you're using the money and that it makes sense. Like, so for instance, transportation, how many people are you proposing to provide what kind of services for? Is it bus passes? Is it transportation to and from appointments? Those kinds of things. Admin is now allowable, I'm reminding you, at 10% of all but other budget line items. And we're reminding you again that we will work with providers to determine final rental assistance budgets. It's very common for us, once we know how much money comes available in the NOFO, to ask providers if they can either increase the number of people they can serve, decrease the number of people they can serve. Also depends on how many applications come in for each CAN area. So just be prepared should your application go forward that those numbers might change. For rental assistance, again, using our best information that we have, we put in the application to use the 2023 FMRs. We may have to adjust that if HUD gives us different information.
And Shannon,
There are some-
we have 2 match questions. So can you use rent, office supplies, utilities, etc. as an in-kind match?
So that's, yes, you can.
Yep.
If you can show that they support this project specifically, yes, you can.
And then with match, can it be state or well, it says can't be. Can it be state or federal funds?
So I know, I think Margaret, no, like, I know that match you cannot use ESG as match. I would look more at the instructions for information on more, like, to get more information on that. I know I know we can use DEMIS funds as match. So I don't know if there's more restrictions on that.
Great.
Project component specific types. Okay, sections. Some of this is going to be repetitive, so I'll try to go through. How are we on time? So this, if I skip something on the sides, please feel free to go through yourselves and ask us questions. If you have them, email us questions. PSH combines affordable housing assistance and supportive services for people experiencing homeless with the greatest needs, meeting HUD definition of disability. I talked about how DEMIS will provide the match on people meeting the DEMIS definition of disability. Permanent supportive housing, type 1, eligible households without children, type 2, adults, households for adults and families. All households must meet the dedicated plus definition. See the instructions for more information on that. And unless the project has another source of services funding, you must apply for $9,000 per household per year for services. And you must agree to follow the permanent supportive housing requirements and operations guide, which is linked here. You may not apply for more than $9,000 per household per year. I'm just going to call that out too. But if your amount is not 9,000, we're going to raise it to that. If it's lower than 9,000. Permanent rental assistance. Projects requiring PSH rental assistance must coordinate with their local mental health authority, their LMHA. So in efforts to verify that, we have this letter that is linked here, which must be submitted with your application. So we ask firstly that you talk to your local LMHA to see if they have the capacity. And if they do have the capacity, we're asking for this letter back for them to say, yes, we've talked to them, we understand their project. We really want you to communicate what your project is, how many units, so that they will be able to give you an informed opinion, right, of how they're going to assist or not be able to assist with providing rental assistance administration for this project. If and when the LMHA declines to administer rental assistance, a private nonprofit may propose to do so. But there are extra questions if that's the case, because we want to know your experience doing this. We want to know your plan moving forward, how you do this to make sure that it's comprehensive. We'll get to it. I see Mansour's question. We'll answer that in a minute. Requirements for nonprofit to administer rental assistance. Demonstrate a feasible plan in accordance with COC and DEMIS requirements. Follow the DEMIS Rental Assistance Administration protocols and go to their training. Participate in their DEMIS training. Okay. Mansour has an excellent question. What's the reason in using the 2023 FMRs and not the 2024, since there's a huge difference? And the answer is HUD. This is using our best guidance from what HUD did last year. Last year, we were expecting, and it was the year 2023. So we were expecting to use 2023 FMRs, and I think that's what we had in our application last year. And then HUD released their NOFO and said, no, we're using 2022. So that's in anticipation that they did the same thing as last year. That's why we're doing it. We would love for people to be able to use 2024, especially given the housing market, but it was because of how HUD put forward the NOFO.
And if the NOFO is different, like we said, we work with agencies very rarely, which Shannon mentioned this, but this is important for any new folks, or a reminder to folks who have applied in the past. Very rarely, even if your project application is accepted, does it look exactly like what you submitted, because we have to sort of wheel and deal and cut and slice and make it work for your CAN, for your project, for all the other applications that we've gotten. So we're going to work with you. And if HUD gives us a different FMR, we'll do that. We'll make it work.
Rapid rehousing combines time-limited affordable housing assistance with voluntary support services to address needs of people experiencing homelessness, including DV. Eligible populations are people who are literally homeless, who meet HUD Category 1 definition of homelessness, or persons who are attempting to flee domestic violence, or who meet that Category 4 definition of homelessness. You can serve adult households or families with children. DV bonus projects, which are eligible under rapid rehousing, must serve 100% people who meet HUD's Category 4 definition. For actually all rapid rehousing projects, DOH will be the applicant. For non-DV projects, ACT will be the fiduciary agency for rental assistance. So all rental assistance funds will go through ACT. Unless the project has another source of supportive services funding, we expect that to be $9,000 per household annually. And rapid rehousing projects are expected to follow the DOH, the rapid rehousing operations guide. For rapid rehousing DV bonus projects, that they will go through CCADV as for the rental assistance fiduciary. In the application, there are extra questions for you, how your proposed projects will meet the specific needs of survivors, and it also asks for quantified outcomes that demonstrate prior performance of the applicant in serving DV survivors. Joint THRH combines transitional housing and rapid rehousing. I just want to call out that HUD there is still the stipulation that the total time a person stays in the project cannot exceed 24 months. So that's still the case, even though you have the two different components. In the application, we ask you to describe why you are using this project type and how it will best serve the population you're proposing to serve. And quantified outcomes is asked for there as well. Another thing to be aware of in the joint THRH is that you as a provider must be able to provide both components to all participants. Participants may choose one or the other. They may go into one and go to the other, but you must be able to provide both to all. How to apply? So we're short on time. So I'm not going to go through all the screenshot of Zengen, and if you want to, we could do that after, but I'm going to try to go through and get to the end of these slides. Resubmit without changes. Liz and I already talked about this a bit. You can opt to resubmit without changes. Email us at the CTBOSCOC Gmail and tell us you want to do that. And here's the link where you can find your application scores from last year. And I mentioned we combined the two applications this year. There's only one application for DV bonus or regular bonus reallocation funds, and here are the links to that and the instructions for them. I talked about the project application profile. It should be there already for those of you who have already submitted a non-DV bonus. Just carefully read and review and make sure everything has been answered. These are the screenshots of Zengen that I'm just gonna, if you need them, if you want to have this open again while you're going through Zengen, that might be helpful for you as well. Talks about steps to go through the project application. There's a link to the project application again. We recommend that you print your application. So there are instructions about how to do that. Zengen tips, pay attention to required fields. Bullets, I think we've talked about that. There's conditional logic throughout. So the questions that open for one type of project might not open for another type of project. For instance, it is allowable, like Zengen will let you say, I want to apply for HMIS funds. But if you're not a DV project, that section's not going to open up for you because it's not an allowable cost if you're not a DV provider or submitting a DV bonus application. There are specific items referring only to PSH or rapid rehousing. Make sure that all parts of your application match each other. If you're saying we're doing this many households and units in one section, make sure it says that refers to the same thing in all sections. The budget matches what you're saying, what you're going to do. And look at those LMHA items. Please be careful about responding to those. Here's directions about what is going to be considered an expansion and steps you would take to follow those. The scoring guide has been posted. It was posted yesterday on the CT BOS website. It's linked here. It's on the website now. We're going to send an email out about that on Monday. Things are very similar. We did add more to the threshold criteria, so pay attention to those items. If you don't meet those threshold criteria, your applications may not be sent for scoring. As Liz said, make sure you highlight what makes your agency and project unique. Provide concrete examples of how participants will be served, and think about adding data, providing data if you have that. I think I've said all the items there. Be sure your program design is consistent with Housing First. Always look at to make sure you're 25. Matt, Liz and I, she's telling the truth. We feel bad every year when people don't meet the match. So pay attention to that. I think I've said everything here. So when we said about the frequently asked questions, in order to get into that document and to be ensured that we're responding to your questions, get them by 3/6. As long as we have the capacity, we will answer questions after that. There were also other things last year that people could have asked, but they thought that they couldn't. Like they were asking or intending to apply for a certain type of budget, but for some reason, those budget items didn't open on their application, so they submitted without. If something like that happens, please email or call us. And if we can answer, if we know the answer, it's easy enough to respond to, we will. It's just if we need to research things, we may not have time after that 3/6 deadline.
Exactly. So you always give it a go. We want to help you as much as we can. It's just if the night before you ask something that's a compliance issue or something we can't answer, we just don't want you to get put in the spot. But like Shannon said, shoot us a note. We're going to do the very best we can. We just kind of need a deadline to make sure we get hard stuff done. Yeah.
All right, I think we zoomed through the last few slides, but this is our contact information. And if anyone wants to stay on and has questions, we can, but we want to be respectful of your time. So I think we can stop the recording, but we will still stay on for questions. Thank you, everyone.